From Chicago's Can TV, a look at the week's events is reported in the newspapers, in the blogs and online, and on radio and TV. This is Chicago Newsroom.
Well, hi again, and welcome to Chicago Newsroom. I'm Ken Davis. So today, we learned that the Melman family, the Let Us Entertain You folks, are all in with Rahm. Rich and his sons have given $100,000, according to published reports, to help assure that Rahm Emanuel beats back all those challenges from Chuy Garcia, Bob Fioretti, Willie Wilson. And why not? The family must really believe that Rahm Emanuel is good for Chicago because, he did sign that contract that gave him all that new airport space at Terminal 5 for a wow bow, a big bowl, and a copy of R.J. Grunt's. Look, lettuce is one of Chicago's favorite companies. Come on, we all know that. They've been feeding me since the Jonathan Livingston seafood days, and that's a long time ago. But I guess this is just another example of how things work around here. According to the Tribune, the mayor can accept this money despite his personal ban on taking campaign contributions from city contractors because technically lettuce contracts with a third party out at O'Hare and not the city, so they're not city contractors. See how that works? So now that we're now aware that Lettuce and the mayor are working on a few things together, let's start planning for the second term theme restaurant they're going to open in the lobby of City Hall. So the aldermen won't have to walk all the way across the street to Petro's in order to, have their shady meetings. Jared's going to run the place, we understand. It's going to be called Rahm's Seafood Prime Steak and Crab, and the specialty is the dead fish sandwich to go. They'll wrap one up in newspaper and send it. I can't believe I'm making dead fish jokes. Let's strike that. Speaking of the upcoming municipal election, we got two election geeks. I don't think they'll mind me calling them that with us today. Jimm Dispensa's here and Mike Fourcher. They're the proprietors of Aldertrack, and it is the one-stop shop for all your data and gossip about the 53 or so elections that are coming up on February 24th. Decision time in Chicago. Guys, I'm so glad to have you.
Great to be here.
Good to have you on the show. So, we've got 50 aldermen to be elected. We got a mayor, a city clerk, a few odds and ends like that. But the aldermen, that's where the focus has got to be today because we kid our mayor. We like to talk about our mayor and our mayoral race. But there's a lot going on out in the wards, and I'm so glad that you guys are out there keeping tabs on this stuff and reporting to us every day on it. I don't really have a preference for where to start, but I am fascinated by something that happened the other day where Michael Chandler out in 24 just quietly said he had Thanksgiving with his family and just decided that maybe he really didn't want to be an alderman anymore and he just dropped out. What is that about?
Well, it might have to do with 16 or 17 different candidates that always seem to file in the 24th Ward. Notable challenger, Michael Scott Jr., son of the late Michael Scott, and he's already showing some fundraising prowess. There's a CTU candidate in 24, as there is in almost every ward. And as now an open ward race, it's really hard to predict who's going to come out on top.
That's going to be the Wild West
and I think
side.
Wild West side, yeah. And I think it's been 12, 16 years since there's been an incumbent that has won in the 24th Ward. So it's not an easy place to be reelected.
Yeah. I worked for a few years for the city, and I worked in the environment department, so we had a lot of connection with Alderman Henry and the great mountain that he built out there when he was running the 24th Ward. I think we can say this now without even having to say allegedly. He basically turned the 24th Ward into an open landfill and let people come and dump all their garbage in the ward. So it's been a politically difficult place for a really long time.
Well, and there's an amazing history behind it. It's in Lawndale, and actually the 24th Ward was the home to Jake Arvey, who in the 20s, 30s, and 40s was the chair of the Cook County Democratic Party, and one of the people that helped Daley Sr. rise to the top. So it's got a lot of history. There's a lot of great things about it. It's just not a stable place right now for politics.
Well, Mark Brown, I thought, wrote a good column about it the other day where he said the amazing thing about it is this guy doesn't appear to be corrupt in any way, Michael Chandler. He's just a kind of an easygoing kind of guy. So that
he's vacationing in Arizona, That's not so bad.
That can't be that bad.
Right.
All right, so should we talk about the 7th Ward? Because that's just, I mean, it's just too hilarious for words. The 7th Ward is a kind of a lakefront ward, a largely African-American ward. Tell us about that.
So the 7th Ward includes South Shore and a good chunk of South Chicago. Goes down to South Chicago Boulevard along the Skyway. So it's north of the Skyway up to, around 67th or so. And it has also a place that has had a lot of change. For the longest time, it was the hog with the big nuts.
Bill Beavers.
Yeah, Bill Beavers, who moved on to Cook County Board. And then it became Sandy Jackson, and the wife of Jesse Jackson Jr. And then Sandy didn't run for re-elect, and so now there's Natasha Holmes as the incumbent. And there's a lot of candidates in that race. Joseph Mosley, Carol Mosley Braun's brother, is running.
Oh, is that what that is? I didn't realize that. Okay.
Yeah, and I think all told, there's 16 candidates right now. They may not all make it onto the ballot, but there's this interesting interplay between the Reverend Jackie Lewis and Vincent Rose, who had originally agreed back in the spring that Vincent Rose was going to run for 7th Ward Alderman and Jackie Lewis was going to run for the 4th Cook County Board District seat, and they would help each other out. Well, it turned out, so they shared a campaign manager, this guy, Matt Harrington. And
remember that name, Harrington.
Right. So, and Matt Harrington has been around quite a bit, actually. He's worked on a lot of campaigns. He's actually working for Doc Walls' mayoral campaign, too. He ran for state rep on the west side as a Democrat, and then ran in Aurora for Aurora City Council as a Republican. So, he's got a lot of mileage. And so, according to Harrington, Jackie Lewis lost, or somebody stole all their petition ballot signatures right before they were supposed to file them to run for Cook County Board.
Welcome to Chicago.
I don't know how you lose that.
How could you possibly lose them?
I've worked on campaigns, and I've been responsible for those signatures. You keep them under lock and key.
That's the crown jewels.
You keep it in your shirt. Whatever you got to do. Somehow they were stolen, and so Jackie Lewis then decided, well, I'm going to run for alderman. And Vincent Rose was not happy about this, and so Vincent Rose and Matt Harrington got into it, and they started arguing, and Harrington left some very F-bomby voicemails for Vincent Rose, which Vincent Rose then shared with us.
Some of which sounded slurred, too.
Yeah, it did I must say, yeah.
He was, so it was not John Gielgud.
Phone call.
It was not John Gielgud. And so Vincent Rose then took Harrington to court, and the judge saying that he was being harassed, phone harassment. Harrington says it was thrown out because the judge said that it was trivial. Rose said it was thrown out on technicality. But what's interesting is that after we ran this story, somebody who used to work for the Aurora Beacon News let us know, oh, hey, by the way, I wrote a story about this 2 years ago with Harrington doing it with another candidate, Tom Swiss. And so apparently Harrington likes to leave F-bomby voicemails.
And we a couple of weeks ago, as Chuck Gowdy did a story, we checked off late night drunken emails off of the aldermanic race list. That happened in 27th Ward with the challenger to Walter Burnett, Gabe Bukinga. Now we've checked off the drunken, profanity-laced voicemails.
Right.
We're not sure what's next. Maybe a fax.
I think there's
Maybe
an app
fax.
for that, isn't there, that shuts your phone down?
Yeah.
Right. Well, there was already an anonymous flyer in the 3rd Ward, the 3rd Ward a few weeks ago. All we need are angry anonymous autocall messages.
Right. Well, and if you are salacious in nature and you want to listen to them, aldertrack.com's got them. You can listen to these. You can listen to the unedited phone calls, and they're pretty funny. We have an interesting phenomenon this time. I don't know if it's particularly historic, but I count your numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think there's 7 wards where there's no incumbent now.
Right.
And those are cattle calls. I mean, you're talking lots and lots of people.
Right.
Lots of people want to be an alderman in Chicago.
Yeah, and some of these open ward races relate to the Progressive Caucus wards, which we'll talk about in a minute, I think. But so if you want to go through them quickly, it's the second ward, that was Bob Fioretti's ward, sort of remapped out from under him.
They took that ward away from him, basically.
And what stands out about the second ward is you have 3 challengers, each of whom has more than $100,000 estimated cash on hand in their campaign fund. There's a Congresswoman Jan Schakowsky protege in that race, Chamber of Commerce head. So that one's 6 candidates, very hard to predict who's going to come out on top.
But there's money in that ward.
A lot of money.
Second ward is sort of like a Lincoln Park ward now, with the way it stretches from the Gold Coast to Ukrainian Village.
It has little chunks of the wealthiest parts of the city.
Yeah.
You know,
Dick Mell may not be in the city council anymore, but his legacy lives on.
right. Yes, that's right. Right.
The other interesting open ward race, the 11th ward. So Jimm, who's alderman for 17 years, is retiring.
Decided he wanted to spend more time, I don't know, if it was with his family.
I think he
or
cited
whatever.
some health issues.
Right.
But stepping.
Oh, that's right. He wanted to take care of his PTSD that he'd had all along or something. Okay, yeah.
And stepping into that race, most notably Patrick Thompson, Water Reclamation District Commissioner, grandson of Richard J. Daley, and longtime resident of the ward. So we see the Daley legacy potentially living on there. In the 15th ward.
Well, hold on. Don't race off from that. So we have the next Mayor Daley being born in Bridgeport right now, is what you're saying, maybe.
Well, he's clearly on a path toward public service. You know, he's been an elected official, and I think this one, he's got a great organization, as the 11th ward always does.
Oh, I'm sure he does.
And there's not too many more of those. You know, we're finding out. The 15th ward is notable because Tony Folks, Progressive Caucus alderman, is now without a ward. So Tony Folks, the incumbent of the 15th, got redistricted out. She's going to compete in the 16th ward against Alderman Joanne Thomas. And there's 9 candidates in the 15th ward now.
So where is the 15th ward?
Well, so 15th is oddly shaped. Parts of
well, of course, it's oddly shaped.
Parts of Inglewood, parts of Gage Park.
Oh wow!
Historically, predominantly African American ward. Now we see, I think, half of those challengers are Latino, half are African American. So we don't know what's going to happen there.
I guess that's just one of those that's just absolutely impossible to predict, right? It just could
Inglewood is another. So the 15th and 16th wards in Inglewood have traditionally always been a crapshoot.
Yeah.
There's a lot of turnover, a lot of change, very difficult races. There's a lot of street work that's done and different from some other places in the city because there is so much organizing that's necessary in order to win.
I'd completely forgotten about this, how I took these 2 aldermen and put them like 2 tarantulas in a jar or something, right? Now they have to compete against each other. That's a vicious one too.
Well, Tony was really put over the top originally with a combined effort from UFCW and SEIU, which really won absolutely no favorites with the people, Alderman Dick Mell and others who were managing the remapping.
Yeah. So that worked against. So moving right along, the venerable 17th ward.
Yeah.
Three challengers. This is where Alderman Latasha Thomas announced her retirement. About a month or 2 after Father Pfleger publicly said, maybe it was time for new leadership. So that was interesting. And you have 3 challengers: Glenda Franklin, David Moore, and Reverend Dukes. I think one of those is strongly backed by Father Pfleger. I forget which, and I think the other is a candidate in the past. So you see a number of races where the same players are showing up trying to win. Perhaps the most interesting open ward race, I think, is the 36th ward, where an incumbent Progressive Caucus alderman, in this case Nick Sposato, districted out. Now he's running in the 38th ward. And you have in the 36th ward what appears to be a candidate with the strong backing from the Barrios organization, Cook County Democratic Charity. Right. And you also have a candidate who seems to have strong backing from State Rep Louis Arroyo. And so it's not clear what's going on there, because you typically find strong alliances among those top political players. But it's an open seat, and funny things happen when incumbents leave.
Now, I lost track of 36 because 36, of course, was my mind just went blank. But
Bill
of course,
Banks.
Bill Banks.
Bill
How can
right.
you forgive me,
The
Alderman Banks?
the
for
long
forgetting.
term, the Banks family really kind of ran the table there, and
his
that
private ward.
includes Galewood
Right.
and a little chunk of Austin, or at least it did for a long time, and maybe a little chunk of Jefferson Park too, and Belmont Cragen.
Right.
So far northwest side, west side, slightly north. And the Banks family, really controlled that for a long time. Alderman Banks was the chair of the zoning committee.
Zoning. Ran zoning.
Ran zoning. Really, you couldn't build anything in Chicago without the Banks family, which they actually then parlayed into a law firm, which handles a lot of zoning and development issues.
To this day, it's so interesting to drive along Narragansett and see these oddly shaped, huge buildings that just kind of got fit in there. And you think, wow, how did they get zoning for that?
And Banks had retired, and he named his longtime driver, really, John Rice, to be the alderman, or he got the mayor to name John Rice to be the alderman. And when Rice ran, Sposato kind of showed up and
Upset the
apple cart. Yeah, that's right.
So they took care of him.
Right. And so now that there's somebody that really isn't part of the establishment anymore, Sposato, the 36th Ward has, which a very long time had very steady boundaries for 20 years, all of a sudden, who cares? They remap everything and change it, and hey, who cares about Sposato? Let's throw him in 38.
Yeah, I kind of got that impression that, you would never mess with the 36 when Bill Banks was there, but now that he's not there anymore, so we need a little bit of this, we need a little bit of that, let's grab, so we'll build peninsulas to sort of get in there and get some of that, whatever ethnicity it is that you want.
That's right.
So then that leads us to my home ward, where it's always been a very comforting thing to know that you can vote for the candidate as you can vote for the Cullerton of your choice, because there's always a Cullerton on the ballot, and that was 120 years or something, or if not a Cullerton, at least a brother-in-law or something. And now Tim Cullerton just says, screw it. I've had enough of this. I don't want to do it anymore. My kids are not interested in the family business. I'm hanging it up. I'm walking away. It's unheard of. We never in our lifetimes. So you have I don't know, what are there, 75 people running in the ward now?
There are 9, and that might go down because there are at least one that was recently removed from the ballot. Notably, Nick Sposato, who's, trying to find a new ward to be alderman in. Also notable, Heather Sattler, who is the I believe the daughter of the former chief of staff to Alderman Cullerton. So
I didn't know that.
Not a family relative, but
so close.
An administrative connection.
I didn't know
at least.
that. Okay.
Tom Caravat, who came pretty close, I think, forced Cullerton into a runoff in 11. So he's shown the ability to get a lot of votes, and a couple of other, a local business owner, but with that many candidates in an open seat, it's really hard to tell who's going to come.
I know that the local newspaper had an interview with a couple of the there are 2 police officers, I think, running in 38, if I'm not mistaken, and they both said that there's really no need for a progressive caucus. I wouldn't be joining that. So there you are. All right, so the big news when we exchanged emails and I said, what kind of things you want to talk about this week, I thought it was interesting that you said, quoting you both now, it's mostly objections and positioning. That's what we're dealing with right now, because the real slugfest hasn't started yet. It's So the big news is, of course, it's all being fought in, what's not court, but what is it? The objection process, the hearings, I guess, right?
The 3, and then I'll turn it to you, Mike. The 3 things that I think stand out and are very characteristic about this process is, one is there's a good amount of animus and hostility there at every table. So, when you decide to challenge the validity of somebody's candidacy, it gets pretty hostile pretty quick. And so you can see that playing out. The other interesting thing is we need to have a process to guard against fraud, and that's the objections process does do that. But there's some questions, at least in my mind, about some of these technicalities that can still serve to invalidate a candidate's nomination. If you failed to submit a receipt for an economic disclosure form, the second one, the one you filed with the county and the one you filed with the city, other states don't really call that something that renders your candidacy fatally defective. And then the third thing is there are a lot of really interesting attorneys who show up every 4 years, every 2 years really, because they also manage cases in the state races. But Mike and I took the time to look back at the 2007 and the 2011 municipal election objections history, and we pulled out some of these prolific election attorneys.
You have a top 10 list.
We have a top 10 list. Mike, why don't you do us the honors?
So
Top 10 list of people you probably have never heard of, but boy, are
you
they
may need to
important.
know.
you
Right.
may need to know. And actually, one of the things that Jimm has done in the racing forum is that we're tracking every objection, and Jimm lists who the attorney is for each of these people. Not everybody necessarily has an attorney. A lot of people are running pro se.
Yeah.
And so at the top of the list, we have James Nally, and Jimm, as everyone knows him. He's a very friendly guy. All of these are very approachable people, and Jimm and I probably know most of them. Jimm has a win percentage of 540, he's batting 540. So that's out of 88 appearances that he's had in 2011 and
An actual
2007.
box score. It's very, very cool.
Number 2 is Mike Casper, and Mike Casper is the famed consigliere to Michael Madigan. And he also has done some other work for Rahm Emanuel.
Well, he had his day in the sun with did Rahm Emanuel really live in this house?
That's right.
But he had some stuff
Right.
left in the basement case, right?
That's right,
He was trying
right.
to prove he was a Chicagoan.
And Michael Casper, by the way, has another firm, Casper O'Brien, which is one of the larger lobbying firms in the state, and he's a batting percentage of 700. And then Adam Lasker, with 35 appearances in 07 and 11, has a batting average of 538. So there are other people with better batting averages. Maybe they don't have quite so many appearances.
Yeah.
There's others that have long-lasting, who've been around for a long time. Rich Means has represented a lot of people in a lot of cases.
For 45 years.
For 45
Yeah.
years, yeah.
Well, I gotta say, just interrupting, I was stunned when I saw the name Russ Stewart on
Yeah.
here. Russ
Yeah.
Stewart for years and years and
Yeah.
years has been doing that column in
Right.
the local newspapers
In
up
the
on the
Natick
Northwest Side
papers,
Native
yeah.
papers. And we've had him on the show several times because
Yep.
he's just like such an interesting political animal. And I knew that he was a lawyer, but I had
Yeah.
no idea. And look at him, he's at 727. He's
Yeah.
like, he was one of the highest people on the list.
Yeah,
He's got
and there's some other people that aren't on here. For instance, Frank Avila Jr. He's representing Willie Wilson right now
For mayor.
Another guy who was a long-standing attorney and is now a judge is Matt Delort. He's now a Cook County judge. Matt was, I'd put him up at the top with Jimm Nally and Casper and Rich Means. But he decided being a judge was better than doing this stuff. Most of these guys, this isn't their real job.
Yeah.
And if you talk to them about it, they say, "Man, I really don't make money doing it." and so they do it because they enjoy it. A lot of them are either lobbyists or they are municipal attorneys, like they represent they're the attorney for all the little small towns in the suburbs. Or they have some completely other different business that they do.
Just let's jump around a little bit here because we're getting close to the end here. The elected school board petition or referendum, I guess, is on 37. In 37 wards. You will be able to vote. It's non-binding though, right?
That's
right.
right. Yeah, and of course the advocates for this wanted to have a citywide referendum advisory. Weren't able to were sort of blocked out from doing that. And so they appear to have worked with a lot of different candidates in 37 different wards. They filed a ton of petitions, none of which were challenged. And so it's going to be interesting, I think, to see what gets more percentage of the vote, the elected school board question or the incumbent or some of the challengers.
But there's a real problem that these guys have to overcome because it's not a citywide ballot. There's confusion about exactly where it's going to be and how you put your efforts in. And the maneuver to keep it off the citywide ballot is very interesting. There's actually a limit to the number of referenda that there can be on the ballot every season or every election. And what City Council did is they managed to come up with a bunch of questions in order to fill all those slots. And so it forced these guys to come up to do it ward by ward. And so when you have it as a ward individual question, it's confusing for the voter. It's difficult to promote it because you can't just put an ad in the paper and say, go vote. And so I think that there's a lot of things, just the mechanics of this vote, that are against people. And it's non-binding. And so it's hard for people to get really excited about something that's non-binding. It's not like in California, say, where things are actually binding. You go vote and you can change the law.
Let's talk a little bit about it's somewhat jokingly referred to as the Progressive Caucus. The aldermen who, I don't know how many you guys say are in the caucus. What is it, 4, 5, 6?
7.
Seven. Is there any possibility that you see anywhere out there that an alderman will be elected who is not currently in the council or in the caucus who would increase the number to 8? Is that even possible?
It's definitely possible for it to increase to 8. I don't think it goes much higher than that. Right off the bat, you have to assume that there's some chance that it goes from 7 down to 4 because of the incumbents who are redistricted out. And then you'd have to believe that there are at least 3 incumbents weak enough to not survive the challenge from, say, a Tara Stamps, who's a CTU-backed candidate in 37th Ward against Emma Mitz, or Carlos Rosa, who's the only challenger to incumbent Alderman Cologne in 35. So I think it probably, I like to say maybe the Progressive Caucus has to go away before it can be reborn in some more serious numbers. It probably stays at about 7.
There's been, we have like less than a minute here, but there's been so much talk in the past about all this money coming in, SEU money on one side and all the ROM-PAC money coming in. Have you seen any evidence of it yet? Is it rearing its ugly head in any way in these races?
Not yet.
Not yet. No. And typically you won't really
mostly objections and positioning.
Typically you won't really see the money start to flow in until the second week of January, just because, number one, it's the holidays. Everyone wants to see how the ballot's going to settle out. And number two, people get busy, and so January comes around, and there's plenty of time. You only need about a week in order to put together a TV commercial, a little bit longer in order to put together mailers. So,
is this going to be a slugfest, or is it just going to be a quiet thing nobody's going to pay much attention to?
In some wards, I think it will be. Remember that in every case except for the 7th ward, the incumbent has all this cash, more than their challengers combined.
Okay, we're going to have to cut it there. I'm really sorry. Jim, Mike, thank you so much for being here, and thanks for putting together Aldertrack. It is a very cool project. Aldertrack.com, right?
That's right.
Just go there and you can become a member and you get daily briefings and you feel like you're really an political insider. So it's a really cool project. I'm glad to have you here, and I hope you'll come back closer to the election and give us the real insight. Okay?
Sure.
All right. Thanks. You've been watching Chicago Newsroom. It's a community service of CAN TV. You can see us anytime by going to this address and punching it in, and you can watch us, or you can tune us in on iTunes. Listen to your earbuds. I'm Ken Davis, back in again. Well, actually, we'll see you in a couple of weeks with another program here on Chicago Newsroom. Happy holidays, and we'll see you soon. Bye.